Hi there. Today we're going to walk through what Contra accounts are and how they work as far as rules of debits and credits. And I'm going to walk through some examples of the types of Contra accounts that exist so that you have a lot more information about that. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi there. We're going to talk today about a concept called Contra accounts in accounting. And we've talked in some other videos about if we have accounts that are set up that are associated with the classification of revenue, then debits and credits work a certain way. If we have accounts that are set up that are classified as expense, then debits and credits work a certain way. We walked through all of the logic of that with those 5 different classifications: revenue, expense, assets, liabilities, and equity. However, there is the ability to be able to have an account that's associated with the revenue classification or assets or equity where the behavior works in the opposite direction. An example of this is accounts receivable. And we talked about accounts receivable in the assets section, talking about how debits and credits work for assets. And our accounts receivable can have a contra asset account called allowance for doubtful accounts. And you can see in the example here that from a classification perspective, both of these are assets, but one is a contra account. They both go to the balance sheet. That's where you'll eventually find them when you look at financial statements. The normal balance of an asset, as we've talked about before, is a debit. However, this contra account, the normal balance, is the direct opposite of that. Therefore, when you look at a balance sheet and you look at the net receivables, oftentimes you'll see it stated as net receivables. Then what that is representing is an accounts receivable balance and a corresponding allowance for doubtful accounts, and they're netting together. Another example of this is when we talk about fixed assets, and you'll often hear this as property, plant, and equipment. They're synonymous. And the contra asset account that is associated with fixed assets or property, plant, and equipment is accumulated depreciation. So as you can see here, the classification is assets. The accumulated depreciation would be a contra account. They both go to the balance sheet. The normal balance of the asset, the fixed assets account, is a debit, but the accumulated depreciation, the normal balance, is a credit, which is directly opposite of that. So when you look at a balance sheet and you see the line that says property, plant, and equipment, or fixed assets, or whatever it may be called, because there's no standard, and that's unfortunate, that balance is going to represent not only your fixed assets value, but also the associated accumulated depreciation with that account, and so it nets those two together to give you a net fixed assets number. Another example would be revenue, and some of the contra revenue accounts that you can have are sales discounts and returns and allowances. And if you follow along with how this works, both of these go to the income statement. And where revenue normally has a credit balance, your contra revenue accounts, sales discounts or returns and allowances, will have a normal balance of a debit. So that when you look at an income statement and you see net revenue, that means that there are all these different revenue accounts that behave like the revenue shown here, but then there are also some contra accounts that go against that, and what you're seeing is the net of all of those added together. So to recap our contra assets accounting, these classifications of accounts that have debits and credits that work in a certain way, a contra account is going to work opposite of what is normal for the type of classification. And so we will go into a lot more detail on some examples with this and actually work through some debit and credit journal entries and analysis of transactions and things like that later on in another video. But this at least gives you the background for how these work. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.